Okay, good morning, everyone. I trust you can hear me. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Cool. So, okay, so just get control of my slides. There we go. So the idea is that data will be moving directly from sites to the data coordinating center, whereas before the path, as people have mentioned, the path was from Sparkle sites to CCC, and then from there off to the hub then, and then from there the agreement was that data was moved from the CCC to SADC. But from now on, I think it's going to be direct transfer. But of course, that is that's managed by the data sharing and data transfer agreements that need to be in place for that to happen. So once that data comes from sites, that data is used in the following way, as per the agreements, data transfer and data sharing agreements. So the SickleInAfrica dashboard, which just gives a basic summary that the PIs and authenticated users have access to view stuff like basic statistics. This is just the numbers, and this is older data that is represented here. So it's just the number. I think it's recruitment numbers over the years. So yeah, so that's one endpoint. Then another endpoint would be based on the agreements, the kind of consortium level analyses that will take place with a bigger pool of data that then feeds into, I think, the research projects as they have been decided on in various meetings. So once the data is here, we currently, what we have at SADC, and we implemented it already, is a Synology, a network attached server, so NAS or NAS. So that's where a lot of our data gets backed up onto, as well as we've got about, I think 100 terabytes worth of cloud storage with ICTS. They manage our Nextcloud server for us. So this is where the data will be stored in once it arrives and archived in. Storage is an issue. So especially when we look at genetic data, I think it was Uganda that talked about 1.5 petabytes worth of data storage. We estimated just for us, and for example, for the project that Prof. Wonkam is involved in as well, hygienes, probably about 3 petabytes would be almost enough to store data. So going forward, we need to look at more storage. So how to back up is recorded in these two SOPs. So what data will be transferred? It will be phenotype data and genotype data eventually. So the file types, for phenotype data, the file types are text files and XML files. XML files come from REDCap, for example. XLSX files are Excel sheets. So typically these data sizes are very small and can be easily transferred by email, etc. Genotype data like BAM and FASTQ files are pretty big. So we're looking at giga to terabytes worth of data that needs to be transferred sometimes at one go. So typically a BAM file would be anything from 6 to 10 gigabytes. So yeah. So our options for transfer would be, for phenotype data would be the REDCap API. And I'll very briefly discuss what an API is, because we've been throwing that phrase around for a while. Sorry, let me just stop here. Daniel, please just time me and please just notice when I when I have 5 minutes left or so, please. Okay, so that's how. So these are the options: REDCap API for phenotype data, but also REDCap data export. Previously, people would be sharing data around, so basically the data is RedCap export would be done, and then that would be mailed around and sent to people. That is not ideal, and that's not necessarily the preferred option. It is doable. It can be encrypted if needs be, and then either mailed or, which is not preferred, or downloaded from a server encrypted. Genotype data, Unix or Ubuntu servers have the ability to, as this tool, a command line tool that allows you to, something like copy a file across big numbers of files across drives, across the network, etc. So the other option is Globus Online, and that's our preferred option. So I'll explain briefly why. So these are preferred options. RedCap API for phenotype data, and Globus Online for vast amounts of data. The other two options are, as I said, options, viable options, and can be done. But the ones in green are option one is our preferred option. So maybe just briefly, for those people who may not necessarily want API, API is an application interface. So think of an API as a waiter at your favorite restaurant. So that waiter, you cannot go into the kitchen to get your food. He must serve you. You tell him what you want, and he brings, at some time, he brings you your food. But also think about this waiter as a very a super waiter. Before you got into the restaurant, he checked your ID, he made sure that your vaccine status was updated. He ensured that, for example, you had enough money to buy at the restaurant. So that's what an API does. An API, for example, that you may be commonly exposed to is a RedCap API. So businesses use this waiter to push messages to you, but they need to be authenticated by WhatsApp, the WhatsApp servers. So they need to be authenticated and authorized to actually send you messages before they can get to you. And that the key that was mentioned, for example, for mobile, RedCap mobile, that key, that API or waiter key is unique. It uniquely identifies you as the person or application that can access information. Globus Online was chosen because it's being used, it runs on an infrastructure that allows vast amounts of data to be transferred at very high speeds. It's typically being used by academic institutions, and I'm not sure, but I think it's being used by the underlying infrastructure is used by the research networks across Africa. These are networks that allow universities or academic institutions to be connected to each other, allowing them to transfer data between each other very quickly. So Globus Online is secure. You're also authenticated by using a key. Data transferred can be encrypted, so nobody can see your information as it's being transferred. And yeah, so that's the idea for, and the implementation of that, we need to still thresh out, but we will be sharing that in due time. But that's a long and short of how data will be transferred. Thank you, Daniel. So I'm open to questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you for that presentation on data transfer. Actually, I've got one question. I can say a question, but from Takudwa TC, who said maybe is there any demo for this session for data transfer?
Takudwa, unfortunately not for this session. But what we can do is maybe at a later stage, maybe somewhere next week, we can actually do a demo with dummy data, for example, for you. Maybe what would be good is if you have a big file sitting somewhere. So what we can do with demo is to, I'll show you how it's done. So we'll be doing, would you want a demo on the REDCap data transfer or the genetic data transfer?
Okay, Mario. It's for Globus Online. Does it?
Yeah, Globus Online is.
Have you installed it in your server? Are you using it now?
Are you talking about us?
So about Globus Online.
Yes. So what we. Yeah, sorry. So you don't necessarily need to install. It's not a big package. You can authentic. So you can log on to Globus Online on the web, and what Globus Online acts on endpoints. So you may have an endpoint for us, for example. The endpoint would be one endpoint would be the CHPC, the South African High Performance Computing Center. That's one point where we process data. And then the other endpoint would be at UCT, where a lot of our data is being stored. So there are many of these endpoints that you can pre-select, provided that you have access to that endpoint and authenticated to use it. And you can then set up an endpoint on your own machine as well. Any software that needs to be installed can be very quickly installed on your own laptop, so you can use your laptop as an endpoint. So endpoints is how our data gets transferred, provided that you're authenticated to set up one and use one.
So,
sorry, please go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, I was thinking is this can be recommended for the sites also.
Yes, exactly. That is the idea. That's the whole idea. Thank you, Takusa. Yeah, noted. I'll speak to that now. Yes, Daniel, that is. So maybe just case in point. So we needed to transfer data about, I think it's about 60 BAM files, as well as, I'm not sure, FASTQ files. We needed to transfer them between us and the CHPC at, sorry, Rosebank. And it was about, I think it's about 400 gigs. It could be less, but it took less than a day. It took a couple of hours to transfer that. It took less than an hour, to be quite frank. And that's the power of Globus, because the infrastructure that it runs on, it's almost like it chops up the files in different pieces somehow and then reconstitutes it on the other side. So the process is fine. So I think this is the way to go for all sites, especially when it comes to large data transfers. And I can probably set up a video tutorial of how to use Globus Online. Takutsa, yes. So yes, we can do the REDCap data transfer. Maybe we can do it sometime next week. We can set up a time. Is that fine, Takutsa?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Mario.
Sure. Ibrahima, by all means, please ask your question. Kevin, you're asking.
Yeah. I'm coming. Yeah, I'm writing.
Sure. Ibrahima, please give me a moment. I just want to answer Kevin's question. So just give me a second, please, Ibrahima.
Okay.
So Kevin, yeah. So you need to. I can do a demo video on that as well. Basically, you register for an account. For us, for example, you can register via your institution. Chances are your institution may have an endpoint already. I know, for example, for UCT, it does have an endpoint. So we can use that endpoint to transfer data from there to wherever. But you can also create your own personal endpoint. For example, I needed to transfer data from my laptop to a specific site, but that is based on authentication. And then you can create an endpoint. So you don't necessarily, you can create two different endpoints between, for example, Uganda and Mali, for example, provided that you're authenticated. So you don't necessarily have to have an account, for example, with CHPC. unless you are given access to this HPC by an admin. Then you have access to that. Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Okay. My question concerns how to do the REDCap data export transfer, and if do you need a special application or like we transfer?
So Ibrahima, the two. Let me just go back quickly. So the option. So when you have REDCap installed on a server, and you have these projects, if anybody who has an account and anybody who has been given the permissions to export data can go through the process that Anami mentioned, as well as some of the other people when they talked about data export. So you can go to data export that data into Stata format, CSV format. So that is a specific file that you can export and then you save it on your desktop. If you want to share that, you can, that specific file, you can share it by email, which is not the preferred method, which is the funders do not necessarily, it's not a secure method. But you can share that, you can encrypt it, and then share that encrypted file, which is slightly safer. So that is from REDCap itself. But when the REDCap API, what would happen is that we have a script, and we're busy developing, adding more features, I think, to the script that we have. What that script does is, once a site has given us API access, like Daniel was talking about yesterday during the mobile REDCap. So basically the server, so the REDCap server gives a specific user specific permissions. That user can export information. It can only export de-identified information. And that person also now is given API access. So it can access the database with a waiter, an API waiter. So now that user, which would be us, would then write a program in Perl, Python, Ruby, and use that key and contact the REDCap server on your side and with that API key and say, this is who we are, this is our API key. We would like to export the information that you've given us permission to use. We would like to export that information. So that's option one. Option two is that first one we talked about, where you can export the data file and share it via mail. But that option two can also be done in another way, where you put that file somewhere in a server that we can download with user login details, or even Globus Online. Although it would be, the Globus Online can be used for that as well. Ibrahima, I'm not sure whether I answered your questions.
No, thank you.
So I did not answer your question?
If you answer my question, yeah, I understand now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I think I can set up what I can do is set up a demonstration at your convenience somewhere next week. I'm really sorry I didn't prepare a demonstration for this session. During next week or the next few weeks, we can do that, and if that's fine with everyone, then we can demonstrate. I can demonstrate the export of not the export of data from REDCap, because Anime has already done that, but basically how REDCap API will interact with your database. I'll be using our database for that demo, as well as I have a brief or a Globus Online demo, if that's fine with everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mario. That was very, very clear. I think a lot of people want to have a demo. I think for the previous sites and the new sites, that will be much of help. So we're waiting for that demo on the particular day that we have chosen.